You embarrass me, Dad. You're just not sophisticated enough to be around my friends. Those words, spoken by my own daughter, hit harder than any hammer I'd ever swung in my 40 years as a carpenter. We were standing in the foyer of her Chicago condo, her voice echoing against the marble floors I'd helped pay for. She looked at me like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out of her life. I froze there with my old leather jacket slung over my arm, the smell of sawdust still clinging to it, feeling like a relic in the polished glass world she lived in. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. My name's David Brooks. I was born and raised in Rockford, Illinois. Spent most of my life with a tool belt strapped around my waist, building homes, repairing porches, and putting food on the table the hard way. My wife, God rest her soul, passed 10 years ago, and since then, it's been just me and my only daughter, Amanda. I poured everything I had into making sure she never wanted for anything. College tuition, cars, clothes, you name it. She used to love helping me in the workshop as a kid, her small hands gripping a sanding block while I held the wood steady. But somewhere between her getting that business degree and marrying Mark, an investment banker with a taste for champagne and tailored suits, she decided my flannel shirts and work boots were beneath her. That night in her condo, she didn't just stop at calling me unsophisticated. Dad, when you come around my friends, you make everyone uncomfortable. The way you talk, the way you dress, it just doesn't fit. Mark and I are trying to move up in the world, and you, well, you don't belong in that world. Her words were cold, practiced, almost like she'd been rehearsing them. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay steady. Amanda, I built the life you live on the back of these hands. Everything I did was for you, she sighed, adjusting her diamond bracelet like she was already bored of the conversation. I know, and I appreciate it. But Dad, appreciation doesn't mean you belong everywhere. I need you to respect that. Respect. That word tasted bitter. Respect was what I'd given her all my life, even when she didn't deserve it. I walked out of her condo that night with the city lights glaring down at me like they were mocking me. Every honk of a horn, every laugh from a passing couple, felt like the world was in on the joke. David Brooks, the blue-collar father who didn't measure up. But as I drove my old Ford pickup back down I-90 toward Rockford, the sting of her insult slowly started to change into something else, something sharper. Amanda thought I wasn't sophisticated enough. She had no idea what kind of sophistication I could show her, the kind that came not from champagne flutes or cocktail parties, but from knowing exactly where the money came from that paid for her so-called luxury, and she was about to find out. The next time I saw Amanda was 2 weeks later, at a dinner she and Mark hosted in their condo. The place reeked of money, Italian leather chairs, a chandelier that probably cost more than my truck, and a dining table so polished you could see your face in it. Amanda had invited a crowd, lawyers, bankers, some young startup guy who bragged about his app like it was the second coming of Christ. And me, the unsophisticated father she couldn't stop reminding people about. I showed up in clean jeans, a button-down shirt, and my old work boots. Not because I didn't own nicer clothes. I had a decent suit from my wife's funeral, but I wore those boots because they were mine. They'd walked with me through every job site, every cold Illinois morning, every hard-earned dollar. Amanda noticed them immediately. "Dad," she hissed under her breath, as she greeted me at the door, her smile tight. "Why would you wear those? Couldn't you at least try?" I looked her straight in the eye. "These boots paid for your first apartment, for your tuition, for that diamond bracelet you wear like a trophy. They're good enough for me." Her face flushed, but she didn't push it. Too many eyes were on her. Dinner was worse. Mark held court at the head of the table, talking about investments, stocks, and emerging markets. Amanda laughed at his every word, like he'd hung the moon. Then came the moment that still makes my blood boil. One of their banker friends, some slick guy with perfect hair, glanced down at my boots and smirked. "Nice footwear, Mr. Brooks. Vintage?" The whole table chuckled. Amanda put her wine glass down, and instead of defending me, she joined in. "He's traditional. My dad never really adjusted to the modern world. That was it. Not just embarrassment, but dismissal. Like I was an old tool rusting in the corner of the garage." I cleared my throat, forcing the room quiet. "You all sit around this table talking about money. But let me tell you something. Wealth isn't what you wear or what wine you drink. It's what you build, what you earn, and what you keep." They laughed again, like I'd just recited a joke. But deep down, I wasn't laughing. That night, after the dessert plates were cleared and Amanda barely bothered to walk me to the door, I drove home with my jaw tight. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the deed papers for her house, papers she didn't even know I still had partial control of. See, when Amanda and Mark bought that condo, they didn't have enough credit to swing the full mortgage. Who co-signed? Me. And who had been quietly covering certain payments when Mark's investments went south last year? Me again. She wanted sophistication? She was about to learn the most sophisticated truth of all. Power doesn't come from the clothes on your back, but from the ink on a piece of paper. I leaned back, a plan forming in my mind. For years, I'd been the man who built foundations for other people's homes. Now it was time to show my daughter that I still controlled the foundation under hers. But the move I was planning, it wasn't going to just shake her walls. It was going to knock the entire mansion of her pride down around her. I didn't rush it. That's the thing about real revenge. You don't swing blindly. You wait, you calculate, and you strike when the ground beneath them is most unstable. The very next week, Amanda called me. "Dad, we're having a little situation," she began, her tone sugar-coated but tight. "Mark's firm had some unexpected losses, and we're a little behind on a couple of payments. Nothing serious, just a bump in the road." I knew exactly what she was asking for without her saying it. Money. I kept my voice calm. "How much?" She sighed, relieved. "Oh, just about 3 months on the condo mortgage. You know, until Mark's next deal closes. 22,000 should cover it." 22,000. To her, it was just a temporary bridge. To me, it was the exact rope she was about to hang herself with. "Let me think about it," I told her. "I'll get back to you." The next day, I drove to the local bank in Rockford, Illinois. I'd known the manager, Carol, for years. She was younger than me, but sharp, always professional. "Mr. Brooks," she said warmly, as I sat across from her desk. "What brings you in today?" I pulled out the co-signer documents for Amanda and Mark's mortgage. "I need to review the standing on this loan." She scanned the papers, raised an eyebrow, and nodded slowly. "Well, you're still legally tied to it, which means you've got authority most parents wouldn't. If they default, you're on the hook. But it also means you can make decisions." "Decisions like foreclosure?" I asked. She hesitated. "Technically, yes. But Mr. Brooks, that's your daughter's home." I leaned back, my hands folded. "No, Carol, that's my leverage. They've treated me like I'm worthless, like I don't belong in their world. Maybe it's time I remind them who put the roof over their heads." Her eyes widened, but she didn't argue. She printed out the full financial report. Payments missed, penalties, the whole ugly truth Amanda hadn't shared. When I saw the numbers, I almost laughed. They weren't just behind. They were drowning. Mark's sophisticated investments had bled them dry. That night, I sat in my recliner with the report in my lap, the TV flickering quietly in the background. My wife's old photo stared at me from the mantel. I could almost hear her voice. "Don't let them trample you, John. You gave everything for that girl. She needs to learn respect." I clenched my jaw. She was right. The next family dinner was at Amanda's again. I showed up, calm as ever, wearing the same boots she despised. This time, I carried a plain manila folder under my arm. Dinner started the same way. Mark bragging, Amanda correcting my table manners in front of her friends. But I didn't bite. I just sat there, patient, sipping my water. Finally, when the table quieted, I slid the folder onto the table. "What's that?" Amanda asked, frowning. "Your reality," I said simply. She opened it. Her face drained of color as she saw the overdue notices, the penalty letters, the foreclosure warnings already on file. Mark's jaw tightened. "Where the hell did you get this?" "I'm a cosigner," I said, meeting his glare without flinching. "Which means I'm not just a bystander. I'm a stakeholder." Amanda's voice trembled. "Dad, you wouldn't—" I looked her straight in the eye. "Wouldn't what?" "Remind you that sophistication doesn't pay the bills. Or show you what happens when you treat the man who raised you like trash." The whole table had gone silent. Her friends were staring, whispers already starting to form. I leaned back, calm as a preacher at Sunday service. "No, Amanda, I wouldn't do anything tonight. But when the bank calls, you'd better pray I'm still in a forgiving mood." Her wine glass shook in her hand. For the first time, she looked less like a queen and more like a cornered child. And that's when I knew I had her right where I wanted her. The calls started 2 weeks later. Amanda's number lit up my phone again and again. Sometimes it was her, sometimes it was Mark, sometimes both. At first, they tried sweet talk, then guilt, finally, threats. One night, Mark's voice barked through the receiver. "You're bluffing, old man. You wouldn't let your own daughter lose her home. People would talk. They'd say you're cruel." I chuckled, low and steady. "People already talk, Mark. They talk about how you strut like a king while drowning in debt. They talk about Amanda's fancy galas paid for with borrowed money. Maybe it's time they see the truth." Then I hung up. I wasn't bluffing. The foreclosure notice went public a week later. In a town like Rockford, gossip spread faster than the wind across the cornfields. It was in the diner, the barber shop, even whispered in the pews at church. Amanda and Mark were broke, and I made sure I was seen everywhere. Calm, composed, never denying, never confirming, just letting the story ripen. The climax came at my sister's birthday gathering, a Sunday dinner with nearly 40 relatives and neighbors crammed into her farmhouse kitchen. The smell of pot roast filled the air. Kids ran between legs, and laughter bounced off the walls. It was the kind of gathering Amanda always claimed was too provincial. But that night, she showed up anyway, looking haggard, desperate, her designer dress wrinkled, Mark trailing behind her like a shadow. The room fell quiet when they entered. All eyes turned. Amanda's smile was tight, brittle. "Dad," she said, her voice too loud. "We need to talk now." I set down my fork and wiped my mouth with my napkin. "We're already talking, Amanda. Everyone's listening." She froze, then lowered her voice. "Please, not here." But I didn't budge. My sister leaned in, whispering, "John, are you sure?" I nodded. They wanted a stage. "Let's give them one." Mark slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. You're ruining us." I stayed seated, calm. "No, Mark, you ruined yourselves. I just stopped cleaning up after you." Gasps rippled through the room. My cousins leaned forward, hungry for the drama, Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, you can't let them take our house. That's my life, my reputation." That was the moment. The perfect poetic justice. I rose slowly, letting the chair scrape against the wooden floor. I looked at her, my own daughter, shaking and angry in front of the same family she once called embarrassing. "You said I wasn't sophisticated enough for your world," I said, my voice carrying through the farmhouse. "Well, I don't belong in your world, Amanda. But you sure as hell belong in mine, starting from the bottom, like the rest of us." The room erupted, half in gasps, half in murmurs of approval. My sister nodded, lips pressed in quiet pride. Amanda covered her face, sobbing into her hands. Mark cursed under his breath and stormed out, slamming the screen door so hard it rattled. I sat back down, picked up my fork, and carved another piece of pot roast. "Now," I said evenly, "let's eat." And for the first time in years, I felt the dignity return to me. Not because I won, but because I stopped letting them take. The fallout was swift. Within a month, the foreclosure was complete. Amanda and Mark's mansion, the one they flaunted as proof of their superiority, was stripped from them. The house went up for auction, and I heard through a friend at the county office that a retired couple from Des Moines bought it for half of what Amanda and Mark had paid. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had spent years chasing status, and in the end, all they had to show for it was debt and whispers behind their backs. They moved into a cramped rental on the outskirts of town. I drove past once, not to gloat, just to see. The lawn was patchy, the blinds crooked, and Mark's luxury car sat on the driveway with a "for sale" sign taped to the windshield. Amanda stood outside, cigarette in hand, her once glossy hair pulled back in a messy bun. She didn't see me, or maybe she did, and just couldn't look me in the eye. I should have felt sorry for her. A part of me did. She was still my daughter, after all. But another part of me, the part that had been humiliated, dismissed, and stripped of dignity, felt something stronger. Peace. For years, I had carried the weight of being not enough in her eyes. Not rich enough, not refined enough, not important enough. But now, she was the one stripped bare, and I had nothing to prove. Neighbors came up to me at the diner, clapping me on the shoulder. "Heard what you did, John." Took guts. Even Pastor Miller shook my hand one Sunday after service and said, "Sometimes tough love is the only love that works." And I realized something. My revenge wasn't just about Amanda losing her house. It was about reclaiming the dignity she'd tried to take from me. One evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, the sun sinking low over the Iowa fields. The cicadas sang, and the old wood creaked under my chair. I thought about my late wife, how she always said, "Don't let anyone make you feel small, John. You've built too much, given too much, to let that happen." I smiled then, a bittersweet smile. Because in the end, I hadn't just taught Amanda a lesson. I'd reminded myself of who I was, and that, more than any mansion or bank account, was worth everything. So here's my message, plain and simple. Never let anyone, family or not, strip you of your worth. Sometimes the greatest revenge is just standing tall and letting them face the emptiness of their own choices. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.